Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Natasha Baisiwala. We talked about taking up challenges that no one else wants to take up, understanding both the pros and cons about working in person and working remote, and about the minute that people feel she's there to change them, she's lost them. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello, hello everyone, and hello, Natasha. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yes, that's right.
That's right. And yeah, before we jump completely into the questions, what I would like to show is a little bit is also where both of us are situated. And I'm here in Belgium, in Ghent. And if I'm not mistaken, we're traveling now to Munich in Germany, where you are. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that's and we're doing this on a Monday afternoon, Eastern. What is it called? Is it Eastern? No, yeah, it's
Central
holiday.
Eastern summertime.
Yeah, exactly. And in
Sorry,
Belgium,
I'm sorry. Central European summertime. My bad. CEST.
Central CEST, and it is at 14 hours in Belgium, or a couple of minutes after 14, after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And what's the time on your side?
Same as you. 203, 1403.
Same, exactly the same, because we're in the same time zone and lots of miles, but time zone wise, we're in the same thing. And Natasha, before we jump into the questions, could you say a little bit to the people who are you and what you want people to know, or for the few people that don't know you?
Sure. I am popularly known as Agile Wanderer, which means I haven't been staying at one place and I've been
Mhm.
moving around countries, both online and offline. I started my journey in business transformation and moved into agile coaching recently.
Mhm.
And currently, I'm working with a fitness technology organization here in Germany.
Wow. And when you say moving around, how should I see this? Is this every couple of months, every couple of years? How?
Every couple of years would be good. Started in India, moved to US, then moved to Hong Kong for some time, then moved to UA, Middle East. Also worked in the UK, and this recent one here is in Germany, in Europe.
Wow. Yeah, it's that's indeed very nice already. I'm sure I will learn a lot about the different kind of cultures and the different things that you're running into. So that's already nice. Is this something before we jump into everything else? Is this something that you inspired to do when you were young, or is that something that just happened, or how should I see
This was
this?
something I inspired to do when I was young because apparently my parents always had people from different countries in their work life and in their personal lives, which got me connected to different cultures, different languages, different people, different perspectives. And that always kept me going and made me more curious and perhaps shaped me into today what I am as a global person who can accept different nationalities and different people and blend with them and adapt to their ways of working and create phenomenal outcomes in their lives personally and professionally.
Wow, that sounds already amazing. And so somehow you learned that from your parents from bringing in the international people that they worked with or they brought home. So that's already amazing. And when you say you had that, you inspired that, was that yeah? Did you do a lot of work to get there, or was that just coincidentally then happening, or did you speak to people and say, "Hey, my next job or my next thing, I want to be in this or that country"? How did that go for you?
All happened through way of work assignments that came my way and I accepted.
Mhm.
Primarily, I think it was a conscious decision to work with global organizations where you got the opportunity to work with different nationalities, different countries. Um, I think I was more popularly known to take up challenging projects which nobody else wanted to take up and move to countries which nobody else wanted to move to. So that kind of opened up a lot of opportunities ahead and kind of created a pathway that I wanted to pursue all my life.
Mm. Okay, that's yeah. I think this is already very inspiring for other people that looking like how do you do this, and so yeah, that's already very nice. So let's jump into these questions. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in the way you are?
So as I mentioned earlier, curiosity and meeting new people was something which kind of shaped me in who I am today. But also the fact that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur all my life.
Mm.
And my dad has been an entrepreneur all his life. I invested a lot of time in my early age to understand what goes in setting up a business. Um, I used to go and sit in his office for days and hours just to see how he manages the whole um, client side of the business and the people side of the business internally. Um, and that got me thinking: um, is this something that I want to do in the later part of my life, or is it something that I want to do in
And
the early
wait,
part
can
of
I
my
can
life?
I can I ask you because you say you were sitting in your father's office? What age were you, if I can ask, at that
5
time?
years old.
Wow, 5 years. I was thinking like, yeah, early 10 teens or somewhere 25 years old. Wow. And you were already thinking that way. Wow. They're really I'm so glad I asked the question. That impresses me even more.
So I
Okay,
was not
sorry,
one
I
of those.
interrupted you.
Sorry, no, that's fine. I wasn't one of those kids who would love to sit in the classrooms and just go by what teachers are teaching you in the class. I
Hmm.
was one of those who would question, if the sun is rising from the east, why is it rising from the east? Uh, the earth rotates, why does it rotate? Um, and I would always get, in the Asian context, punished and kicked out of the classes for disrupting the sessions. But I think that kind of came in from the high level of curiosity. And my father kind of identified it and he said, "Why don't you come and start spending time with me in the office?" And that's where I started realizing that there are different ways of learning. You don't have to restrict yourself to the classrooms.
I like that. I like
And
that.
I think that learning got extended somewhere in my journey of business transformation projects and now the agile projects that I've been taking up, wherein you create a space for people in an unconventional way of discovering themselves and what they're doing, and reflect on those beautifully to move forward to create continuous improvement, uh, rather than telling them that this is the process, this is the way to do it. So I think the human side for me comes out naturally, and I intend to focus more on that rather than on the frameworks and the policies and the processes.
Mhm. And is that I really like that part where indeed you say you focus on that yeah on the people and everything there. Is that something that you had all when already when you started out with how would I say it when you started out with agile, or was that something you've learned along the way?
Learned along the way. I made mistakes. I learned from them,
Ooh,
primarily through
make
pausing
mistakes.
and reflecting. Um, there were certain organizations which were okay with those mistakes. There were certain organizations that were not okay with those mistakes. But then I paid
Mm.
my price for making those mistakes. But at the end of the day, it's the experience and the journey that you went through is what shapes you, I think, as an agile professional in the long term.
I like that. I like that. And when you say some people were not ready with these mistakes, could you give an example about some of these, without giving names of these organizations, of course,
Sure.
but of some of these things that people, yeah, didn't like when they saw you making such mistakes?
So I wasn't sure what was the trigger for them to do it, but some way they felt threatened when somebody else made those mistakes for them. So if I was making that mistake, somewhere my leadership team felt threatened that it may cost them their jobs, or
Hmm.
their roles in the organization. Whereas when I reflect now, those mistakes were not something that would have led to those consequences. I think it was more from the space of insecurity that people don't want to accept those mistakes. Um, Maybe some people want to make the mistake and learn, but they're just scared. So it's also also from the space of fear. I think it's also because of the fact that we are so used to what we are getting in our bank accounts at the end of the month that we don't want to lose that comfort zone and take the
Hmm.
risk uh, of making a mistake and learning from that mistake. And of course, with the mistake also comes the accountability, which a lot of people shy away from. So I think these were some of the reflections that I've had so far in my past journey where mistakes were not accepted. But then, of
I
course,
really,
there were some people who are perfectionists, and I admire them. But I know I'm not a perfectionist. Um, I'm just an ordinary human at the end of the day who makes mistakes and learns.
and these perfectionists, these don't, they don't make mistakes, or how should I see that?
I think they make mistakes, but they don't want to accept the fact that they made a mistake. And they just become so unkind to themselves when they actually make a mistake, that they just forget that it's okay, it's fine. Even a machine at the end of the day makes a mistake, no matter how hard you code it. So it's all about perspective.
I really like that. I really like that. That indeed, sometimes we make mistakes, um, and yeah, sometimes we learn about some of these things, and yeah, I recognize what you say about customers not being the customers that really have a hard time when we well, for them to make mistakes, they want everything to work perfectly. And I think sometimes we, in a way, it might be setting a good example if you show your vulnerability when you make mistakes, because all of it, I really agree what you say. All of us, we make mistakes. Some might be small, some might be bigger, but the more we share our mistakes, we can learn from it. Um,
Beautiful.
I'm, I'm,
Yes.
I'm trying to think. I think it was it in the Amy Edmondson about yeah the her book that she wrote about psychological safety when they did research in what is it in hospitals where they noticed that the hospitals that worked best where they looked at things and they thought, oh, that's just kind of strange because these people actually make more mistakes than in others, and it took them a while to realize, no, they're not making more mistakes. It's just an environment where people are open to talk about these mistakes, and that is much more better. And in the others, these mistakes will probably also be there, but nobody talks about them, and they're hidden, and because of that there might be more problems in the long run. So that's indeed something that I think is helpful. And at the same time, I recognize for some of the clients that we're working with, yeah, it will take them a few coaches or a few other people who show up there as brave as you are to realize that, okay, that's actually the path to go and not to, yeah, not to go. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that whole story, I already really love it. Um, and I want to go maybe a little bit deeper into that. Is that because you also talked about your father allowing you to be in his office? Is that something that you picked up from one of your parents, or where did you learn that kind of thing about these
Um,
mistakes?
it taught me a lot during my days with my dad in his office. I think as an entrepreneur, you come with a mindset that you have to take those risks. Some risks will be digestible, and some risks may not be that good enough for you to pay a price for. So I think what I really learned with the time that I spent with him was his risk taking ability, um, learning from his failures, recognizing those failures, but at the same time also ensuring that what he's learned that he doesn't have to do next time, he's not doing it again. um,
Mm.
I also learned that people are the center of any organization, which is the people that work internally with you in the organization to make it a success, but as well as the clients and your competition around you is also equally part of that ecosystem. And somewhere, if I refer back to what you said, if we are not hearing to our customers who are looking for that perfect product at the end of the day, um, we are really not progressing in what we are trying to solve for them um, through our offerings. So that was another thing that I learned from him, that even though the customers want perfection, it's always important to stay connected with them and hear them out. What is it that they're looking for? You may not you may not meet the 100% of the expectations, but even if you reach 50%, it's half the battle won.
Mm.
So that was another lesson I learned. The part which I think a lot of organizations cringe and a lot of entrepreneurs cringe at is your competition. Um, and I think competition is your best teacher, which tells you what not to do, but it also tells you what you can do to expand your offerings, not just beyond your circle, but outside of that circle. So these were some of the top things that I learned from him at the early age when I was spending time with him.
Wow, and that you, I, yeah, like you grasped already at the age of 5, or that's just something that you learned along the way?
Evolved over a period of time. Uh, of course, it was something that you see, you observe, you do it on your own, and then you realize that, oh, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, that's yeah, that indeed makes sense that things evolve. Is this something that you at some point also discussed with your father, or was that more just observing, or did he explain some of these things that happen, or is it purely the observer part?
Observation and curiosity. So, yes, I did ask questions. There were days when I would get the answers. There were days when I was told, just stay quiet and keep watching. You will get your answers eventually.
Hmm.
Um, so, I think that helped me a lot to understand when to pause and have silence around you, and when is it that you can continue to ask questions. Because sometimes the answers are right in front of us, but we aren't able to see them through the lens that the other person is trying to make us see through. So I think it's important to recognize, and it comes with time and practice, um, when to pause and just observe, and when is it that you can start asking questions.
Wow. That's that's already something to learn. If you can learn that before even jumping into your own adventures and before launching your own entrepreneurships, that's already really nice, I would say.
Yeah, and I realize that a lot of these lessons are now um, being seen by me in this agile space too. And it has helped me evolve and get involved in this journey of agile coaching a lot. Um, as I said, I'm not somebody who would pursue an agile project based on frameworks and whole host of other processes. For me, agile starts right from the heart of an organization, which is people. And if you get that journey right in the first place, everything else will evolve.
Right. Indeed. That is, yeah, a lot will evolve and a lot of things we can learn. Okay, I want to move to that next question, that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of you?
I think it's predictable now for everybody and for you. I would have been an entrepreneur. Um, yes, I would have been an entrepreneur. I always wanted to have my own setup in the social impact space, and work with countries and people who haven't been able to find an opportunity to get financially independent. So that is one space that I wanted to be part of. Unfortunately, because I'll say the reality of lives are very different from what we perceive and we want to do in our dreams. Um, Universe gave me an opportunity to collaborate with one such organization recently before I moved to Germany, and they have been doing some phenomenal work in the same space that I was talking about. So I did get an opportunity to be a scrum master with one of their teams and help them move forward and continue to make that impact.
And if you say, because what I've heard before kind of made me feel or gave me the impression that you are already an entrepreneur. And when you say what would be different, I would have become an entrepreneur. What's the difference between what you're doing today and being that entrepreneur with that? Yeah, what is it for you? That difference.
Uh, when you're working in an organization, even though you will have an entrepreneurial mindset, but you have to restrict yourself within that corporate space and their ways of working. So if you ask me, do I feel like an entrepreneur at this point of time? Nope. I just feel like any other employee in the organization who's being
Mm,
paid at the end of the day for doing what the organization expects you to do. But when I'm an entrepreneur, I choose what I want to do. What is it that I want to offer to the world around me, and what kind of difference I want to make in that world. I choose how many mistakes I want to make and how I want to move forward with those learnings and adapt to those learnings. As an entrepreneur, I have, I'll say, the luxury and the liberty to pause when I want to take rest and when is it that I want to continue to push myself forward for making the difference in the world that I want to be part of. So I think each side comes with its own pros and cons. But yes, the freedom that I would have as an entrepreneur to build and create something of my own does not come with an organization with a dedicated role in it.
right. That's definitely is different. Um, and I also hear that spirit that you from an entrepreneur that you're using inside an organization to, yeah, even though it's bounded in a context, I think you use it to change the context away and to change the organization in a way. Um, and so that's yeah, I see a lot of similarities, and I do agree the context is more limited, but sometimes the limitation gives you also much more options. Uh, um, is there anything that with what you do today that you maybe regret of not being an entrepreneur, or is that something that you still see in the future, or how is that?
No regrets in my life for whatever I've done and whatever decisions
Mm,
I've taken. I think each decision has helped me move forward in what I want to do ultimately, which is my entrepreneurial journey. But I think with the changing dynamics of the world, you need to change and adapt to what's happening around you. Um, and I see Germany as one of that opportunity right now for me because technology is something which has always been close to my heart. Um, and this is kind of helping me shape up my later part of the years when I'll start my entrepreneurial journey.
yeah, thanks for adding that part. Let's move to that third question. What do you consider today your biggest challenge, and why is that a good thing for you?
This is something that I really want to reflect on. Um, I think the biggest challenge for me has been to learn new languages.
Hmm.
And that is kind of restricting my movement within Europe and my opportunities to learn and grow from other agile practitioners who are in this continent. Um, I am trying to learn at least the basic level of each language, right from French to German to Dutch, but I know that that's not the way to survive. So that's also that's also putting a perspective in my mind lately that how challenging is it for agile, I'll say the new agile practitioners who are trying to transition from what they are doing at the moment, which has no connection with what they will be bringing for the organizations which they, once they get into the agile coaching. So, for example, if I have somebody who's a dancer and who decides one fine day to do a career transition into agile coaching, yes, there are a lot of aspects of agile that they can bring along with them. But I think somewhere that learning journey needs to set in. And it's sometimes so overwhelming and complicated with so many options available to go through, either certifications, mentorship, coaching. At the end of the day, you really have to find out that way and move forward. So I think this is where my challenge is right now. Um, how do I explore Europe as a continent, and get the best of all the agile practitioners that are present in Europe?
And well, you started out by saying that a part of that challenge is learning languages. How many languages do you speak, or
Okay.
do you know more or less without knowing detail?
I'll say about four of them. Three are Asian languages, and one is English, which is, I'll say, mostly preferred language across the world.
Right. And did you and like English, is that something you learned in school? Because I think in India, English is rather, I think also depending on schools, it is rather because it's originally founded, if I'm correct, by England. So there is a lot of, well, founded not, but yeah, taken over in a way, and the school system formed in a lot of ways. So did you learn a lot of English there, or is that something you learned later on?
Oh, no, no, no. So English is part of our study journey, our early age days. But then English was always there in the country. It's not that it happened overnight or we suddenly woke up and adapted it. Yes, you're right. Primarily because of the colonialism that we went through for almost 100 years. Um, but I think people are comfortable. And there are some parts of India which only speak in English. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So it's not that we use it as a second language. It is one of our primary languages too. It's just the choice that people make at the end of the day. It's a democratic nation. So we choose what we want to learn and how we want to move
Yeah,
forward in
but
life.
that I was looking also for how did you, because that's something that was in a way forced on you because you're in that system and you learn English. But it allowed you probably also to go explore in different kind of countries. The other languages, is that also something that you learned then back at home, or did you learn them later on during your?
Other languages I learned later on during my education, and of course the cities within India that I was traveling to. So there are certain cities where you need um, their languages to be known to survive. So yes.
Mm. Yeah, so that's yeah, because I think there's, yeah, people don't always realize that we talk about India as if it's one thing, one small thing, but I think it has much more different kind of cultures and languages than many other countries. Um, yeah, that's I think for a lot of Americans and a lot of Europeans even, it might be hard to realize how vast different the kind of parts of India are, and different kind of things. So that's why I was asking a little bit on how you learn these things. But that, like you say, you moved to a couple of countries. You ended up now at this particular moment in Germany. Um, I yeah, I've worked already with companies in Germany, and I know that it's a little bit better these days. But still, I have the feeling that Germany, if you don't speak any German, it's really hard. Was that the case for you? How is that for you?
Yes. So when I started applying for roles here, most of them asked you to have German knowledge, speaking knowledge, for the assignments. I just got lucky with this organization because they were looking at somebody who could speak English, primarily because they have global workforce with them and they are spread across continents, not just restricted to Germany. So that came to my advantage. Um, But otherwise, if you want to live here and survive in your day to day, yes, you need to know German. It's interesting. Some people are open to have conversations through Google Translator. Some are open to have conversations in English, but then there are still a lot of people who do not prefer, and they still prefer Deutsch as the preferred language.
Mm. But still, for you, that is, you don't consider yourself knowing German or talking, because that was not all languages you mentioned. But does that uh, do you use it a bit in the day to day work, or is that is English good enough for you in how you work or
Um,
live?
The natural preferred language is English, but yes, I am adapting to German. And the good part about the organization is that they have everything happening in two versions. One is German, one is English. So you get the opportunity to practice your German as well. We also have dedicated days when we have our meetings only in German. So it kind of helps you evolve with the language. And people are friendly and helpful. So they're always ready to help you. And
That's
then your savior in technology world, Google Translator. How can I not give it its complete credit?
that is true as well. I mean, yeah, it's a conversation I sometimes have with my children. Like, how could you even learn, live in a world without Google Translate or ChatGPT or I don't know, Deepler helping us out with translations? And indeed, these days we have it on our phones. So even if we're somewhere in a store and we can't ask for help in the language, um, yeah, I'm trying to think of the exact year. I don't know exactly, but it's probably around 20 years ago that my partner gave me a weekend. So we spent a romantic weekend in what was it, in a small city somewhere in Germany, where there was curing and a lot of things, so very healthy stuff. Um, my partner organized everything over fax, so that tells you a little bit how long how long ago that was. In English, sent everything to the hotel, and everything got organized by fax. And I didn't know anything about that, so we go there. We ended up there, and it turns out that in that hotel and later on in that whole small city, nobody spoke a word of English. So in the hotel, the faxes had been translated by the daughter of the owners, but she was not in town in the weekend. So we're ending up in a city where nobody speaks English. Even at the information center, especially for tourists, they didn't speak any English.
Wow.
Um, and I tried my best German because I had 4 years of German in school, but I was really bad at it, and that kind of was proven that weekend because they replied to me that they didn't understand any Dutch, and I was like, okay, now I don't speak any German anymore. And literally the whole weekend was like pointing fingers. This is what we want to eat. This is where we want to go, and things like that. Because we
I can
literally,
so
with
relate.
yeah, with everything that we thought we understood, it totally didn't help out. And yeah, at that time, um, maybe Google Translate already exists. I doubt it, but definitely we didn't have any smartphones at that time, so there was no option to even search anything on our phones. Uh, so so yeah, I can definitely see that a life with Google Translate or without is a totally different kind of life. So that's yeah, I had forgotten that story completely. So thanks for reminding me about that. But it's interesting that how in the agile world, we always say like, okay, it's people and interactions over processes and tools, but tools do help us. Tools like Google Translate help us also in our interactions. I think that's also, yeah, important to realize that. So yeah. I want to move to that next question about what drives you. Because if I listen to you, if I hear the whole stories, I hear a lot of passion, I hear a lot of drive. Moving countries just to learn is just one example. Um, do you know where that drive and that passion is coming from?
I think mostly from the space of curiosity and vulnerability. When you're curious, you also need to be vulnerable to hear opposite thoughts or contradicting thoughts which you may not agree to at the end of the day. It's also about creating that space of safety for the person with you and around you to have those conversations and learn and move forward. So I think what moves and what drives me forward throughout have has been always curiosity and vulnerability. Yes, I pay my own prices for those moments, but then I think I've learned more than what I have lost in that journey.
Wow. That's so profound. That's so profound. And it's um and is that, well, it brings me again back to that small version of you that were in the way I understood it, and maybe I'm paraphrasing a little bit wrong, but what I remember from that story is that in the classroom your curiosity was almost punished. They didn't like it, and with your father that was kind of applauded. In a way, he also sometimes said like, "Okay, don't ask now, you will learn later." But it feels like he reacted to you much more as with respect to you than that happened in the classroom. Is that a correct understanding of that, what happened there?
I'll say it's more got to do with the systems. A family member would always be more protective, especially when it comes to kids. So they will create that space and they will make you feel that you're accepted. Versus an environment outside, which is governed or ran by so many other different perspectives, laws, thoughts, biases, prejudgments, preconceived notions. And rather than fighting that uh, and trying to prove that you are part of them, it's just best to be who you are and create your own space. And I see that in organizations too. So they were organizations that did not appreciate asking questions or being curious or being vulnerable. And they are organizations that I've come across recently who thank me for being curious, who thank me for not making changes immediately in their ways of working and just pausing there and understanding what's happening. They thank me for being vulnerable and creating the space for others to be vulnerable and share what's bothering them and what is it that we can do together. So I think it's all got to do with which ecosystem you're part of. Respect the ecosystem. If you don't feel part of that ecosystem, just step away. I mean, there's no need for you to keep pushing and trying to make a change when people are not ready to change at all.
Hmm. Um, but how do you know? How do you recognize that? Because yeah, for me, there is always like we're somehow, well, I don't know, but for me, I'm in many cases hired to be that person that will help that change, and it's always a difficult balance to, okay, you want to work with respect to people and at the same time push them a little bit to their boundaries, like, and preferable, not really over their boundaries, but still, if it wouldn't be beyond their boundaries, they would do it themselves. So you always have to, like, with respect, try to push it. How do you recognize that? At what level can I still help them out a little bit? Maybe push a little bit, or I don't know. Push is, it feels a wrong word to use, but how do you work with that? These kind of boundaries.
Great question. And this is somewhere that I use the analogy of ice, an ice cube. The ice is in a state of freeze, unfreeze, and refreeze mode. So when you have the ice in the freezed state, that is something where the person, if I put it into human context, the person has already been in an environment that they are used to and they are not open to change because they've already formed a shape. And similarly, the
Hmm.
ice cube has formed the shape in which it was part of. When you leave the ice outside, the ice cube outside to melt, it starts taking a shape, it starts becoming shapeless, I'll say, because it doesn't have a shape. It starts melting and it can go in any direction in the form of water. And that's where the whole change starts happening. And to get people in that whole frame of change is when you start speaking their language. When you start recognizing that, yes, I understand your pain. Yes, I understand that change is not something that we all want in our lives. And help them start looking at perspective from what change is in their own world. For example, a developer loves to code. Generally, every developer would love to code and they code the way they code. But then, do all those codes become successful? No. Sometimes they need to adapt what they've already coded. Some
Mhm.
days they just need to do a paired programming kind of a setup to understand where that code is not working out for them. And that's the space which they've created for change for themselves. And if you can recognize that space, you can actually help them connect the dots with the real change that you want to bring in with your agile practices in their space. Wherein just not by telling them that this is the metrics you need to follow, or this is your WIP limit, or this is your X limit, but by helping them see while you're spending time in adapting your codes, this is how you can spend time in adapting your environment around you and start looking at different perspectives around you to see if it's working out for you. Ask questions, encourage different perspectives. So invite those perspectives on the table. Help them see beyond what the obvious is. The minute you start making them feel that I'm here to change what you're doing, you've lost them in the translation.
Mm.
But the minute you are there with them saying, I love what you're doing, maybe we can just take it to the next level, they want to hear you. And that's when you start seeing them being open to hear what you want to bring on table. They're open to experiment. And when that journey starts off, then you see a refreeze moment wherein you can bring that new change and freeze it for them again. So the ice cube from the melted state goes into a new container and starts freezing itself in that new form of that container. And that's where the change happens.
I really, really like that. I love that story. Probably something I will borrow or steal or whatever. It's at the same time I also recognize that sometimes, well, not sometimes, in most cases, we're brought in with the goal, or the people who bring us in with our goal or give us a goal to change something. And then the other people are like, okay, yet again another coach and yet someone else. And so, how do you get past that to make sure that people, because you have that goal, you're yeah, in a way, and how do you come back to that connection at that moment?
Find your sponsors.
Hmm.
So when you start building your relationship, look for those key people in the leadership who will be part of that change with you. If you're able to influence them, they become your sponsors and your advocates. I see a lot of agile practitioners around me coming with this arrogance that I know it all and I will make this change. And if the client does not succeed in that change, they end up blaming the client, not pausing to reflect and see what is it that they could have done differently. And that is something I've learned from a lot of these agile practitioners what not to do. And what I really focus on from those learnings is when you just find one person who's willing to hear you in the organization, and when they ask you, what is it that you want to change? My response is not that I want to change XYZ. My response is, I want to help you grow to the next level. Is there any way we can collaborate? I love what you're doing. And I think you've really established what you're doing. But don't you feel that there's a need for us to move to the next phase and experiment something new? And that's where I see minds opening up. And that's
Hmm.
where I see people are willing to have those conversations. It takes time. So patience is key.
Yeah, I fully agree. It takes time, and yeah, depending on how much time we get or give ourselves, or the people give us, because yeah, developers are in many cases under a lot of pressure. So, how do we get enough time with these people to, yeah, that they have the time to talk with us, and yeah, and get to that confidence level, and at the same time get enough time to keep doing their work. So. Because many of them, they don't see the conversations with us as their work, but it's as much work as anything else, I would say. Um, I really love that whole idea. I think it's yeah, indeed, taking the time, making sure that time. I recognize so many of the things you say and the challenges, because taking time is a challenge for many of us, I would say, in some of these things. So talking about challenges and everything there, what do you consider your biggest achievement? Where would you say for yourself are you most proud of? And maybe before we jump into that, because basically this is your moment to shine, this is your moment to brag. Is that easy for you, Natasha, to brag about you?
No. Um, but there's something that I want to really recognize in my journey. I think what has been my biggest achievement is the relationships that I have created and built over these years, uh, not just in my country but outside my country. Um, it takes a while for people to accept you,
Mm,
uh, especially when you're from Asian countries. Um, and I think stories and experiences somewhere bring hearts closer and people closer to you. And one such skill I think which has helped me is active listening. I give more space to people to talk than me talking about me. Um, and don't just listen to react or to respond. I listen to understand and feel what they're going through, and then relate with it and move forward with it. So I think that somewhere opened up a lot of opportunities for me to get some international projects, assist some of the seasoned practitioners, agile practitioners across the world, um, especially during lockdown, in the kind of work that they were doing. Um, an opportunity to be part of closed group of networks of agile practitioners where they create safe space and they are open for different nationalities to be part of that journey. I think that has been a success journey for me. So if I want to really contribute the accolades, it's going to be people around me who've been part
mm.
of my success story.
Um, I like it because it's so general. It's so, yeah. I think it says a lot about you and how you do it, and at the same time, it's very open. So it doesn't go to any specific thing. So could you maybe give an example on how that works, on where you feel like, hey, when I was working there or that, this is how that is visible, that achievement for you or for others?
So for me, the way I measure success and achievement is not by being recognized in public by saying, oh, she brought this success to us or she contributed here. For me, and I think this is something which is tough for agile coaches to accept, for me, it's all about leading from behind. It's about what you have created at the end of the day for people to succeed on the front end, for them to shine, is success for me. So I don't want somebody to say, oh, Natasha did this for us. I want them to say, we have achieved what we wanted to achieve at the end of the day. I was just part of that success journey. And that's fine. I was also one of the contributors. And I'm happy with that. Because at the end of the day, I go back with a smile and I say, I created value.
Mm. I recognize that, and at the same time, it also makes it harder for you to sell yourself in a way, and to yeah, to show. And I remember a story I had with the late, or a conversation I had with the late Jerry Weinberg, where he said that one of his customers said to him, like, I have no idea what Jerry does, but things go better when he's around. And I thought, wow, that's so nice as a compliment to get. Yeah. People have no idea what you're doing, but things are going better than what you're. Is that somehow how you would describe it for yourself,
Yes,
or how?
yes, yes, absolutely. And I completely agree to it because for people like us, we have those people coming back to us again and again. And I see that. I see a lot of people coming back again and again saying, Natasha, can you partner with us on this XYZ project? Can you partner with us on XYZ client? And I'm like, wow. So I did something which made a difference, a whole world of difference for them. And they would still want to continue to collaborate with me
Mhm.
and see what I can do more for them. So I think for me that's the yardstick of success. It's not about how much money you get. It's not about how many awards you win. It's not about um, how many books you've written at the end of the day. It's all about how many people have come back to you and said, "We want to work with you again."
So in a way, it's how many people's lives you've improved in a way.
Yes, and I think
Yeah,
somewhere
that's
that social impact concept for me starts kicking in.
yeah, but that's right. And this is why I always keep asking that the question before, how easy is it for people to brag? And I also in your answer, it's kind of clear that yeah, you don't even want other people to brag about you. You just want them to feel that okay, I'm just part of the whole thing. Um and at the same time, I also think that because of what we do, because of what we have an impact, if you don't make it clear like hey, the fact that I was here helped out, sometimes people don't always realize it. And I think people in the teams usually know, but it's not the people who pay your payroll, it's not the people who pay your money. And sometimes yeah, it is important that yeah, people recognize that what we do is having an impact, and that or at least a positive impact, at least for these things. But thanks for sharing, because I think it's so crucial to focus there on okay, how do we have an impact in a positive way on people's life? Do they want to call me again and contact further with them? I want to move to that next question. Is there a personal agility tip that you want to share?
Pause and reflect. That's the only way that you can bring in continuous improvement, not in your life and in what you do, but for others around you too.
Hmm.
So I think being open and honest with yourself and looking at the mirror every day and asking yourself that question: what did I do today to make an impact on me and others around me? And what did I do today that I could have done differently for me and for others around me? I think that really helps in bringing in your personal agility in what you do.
And we live in a world that is in a very fast pace. So, how easy is that then for you to pause and reflect? Because I can imagine that you also get a lot of pressure and a lot of, I don't know, influences to move on and things. And how easy is it to then for you, Natasha, to say, well, relax, pause a little bit, and reflect?
Um, so, what is important is to, when I wake up in the morning before I start the day and when I end the day, those are the two times in my life where I have control on myself. Whatever happens in between, as you rightly said, is more got to do with speed, with expectations, and with others around us. But at the same time, it also allows me to pause and say, I need some time, and a realistic time. It doesn't mean that I'm going to take months to come back, but
Mhm.
I need 24 hours at least to take that decision and move forward and see what happens. Jumping to anything that is coming your way just to prove that you know it has not never been my style and my way of doing things. It's important for me to pause, assimilate, understand what I'm getting into. What is it that I want to achieve at the end of the day and help others around me to achieve at the end of the day, which has always driven me forward.
I really like that, but at the same time, I can imagine that yeah, it's so hard to do that. Like you say, taking 24 hours in a world that wants almost instant reactions, and I recognized well just this conversation. yesterday something happened for you. So we had originally scheduled that this conversation like literally 24 hours ago. Um, and okay, you yeah, without any problem. I don't know what happened inside you, but you just said, well, today it's not really working out. Can we move it? Then I looked at what was possible in my agenda, and we just did it like 24 hours later. Is that an example of this, or is it? Yeah,
One of the examples. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I was worried yesterday because I did not know if I'm going to give my best, and I'll be able to bring what people would want to listen and hear to. Um, but then, unless we do not ask, we do not know what the response is from the other side. So yes, I was vulnerable. I was curious. I was worried. But it was also a moment for me to pause and say, "No, Natasha, it's not the right day. Just go back and say it. If it works out, great, great. If it doesn't, maybe another time."
I think that's the thing. Yeah, for me it was like, well, originally when you asked, it wasn't clear how long it would take to solve the original issue. So we first tried to take a little bit time yesterday, and then very clearly now this is ridiculous. It's not helping both of us. Let's just rephrase it or rechange it to today. And I think that's such a nice example of, okay, yeah, it's, I think, yeah, for me, like I said to you, like this is your story. So having you being all stressed up here, worrying about stuff that's going on in your house, it's never it's never good. I think it would probably have ended up in a whole different kind of conversation, which will not help any of us. Um, and at the same time, I've also seen where people sometimes drop out just before a conversation, and then we have a hard time to find a new date. And this is for me the best of both worlds. It's like, okay, there is something's happening, and then we take 24 hours, and yes, okay, especially in Europe, I try to do a lot of these conversations either in the evening, either in the weekend, because, well, both of us, we have a day-to-day job, so we don't want to interrupt it with the day-to-day flow of the work that we're doing. Um, we were lucky that it was a long weekend, so that it helped out. But in a way, for me, it's like that. This is the best way to do that. Let's not way too long, because I've just scheduled this morning, or I tried to reschedule a talk with someone that didn't work out, and now we're almost a year later and we still didn't have the conversation. And I know both of us were looking forward to that, but yeah, it was sometimes hard. So in this way, I think the fact that we took it and they did immediately 24 hours, this is a really nice example, and I think so important for everybody. This conversation, it's nice. I really love to do this, but it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen on the moment it happens. It still is, yeah, it's just for me a way to connect with people. There are a lot more important things than this conversation, so I think that's also important. So thanks for sharing that, because I think it's so crucial in the world that we live today to yeah, think and say, okay, let's pause, reflect, let's see what is the worst thing that can happen, what can we do. And taking 24 hours is usually brings a lot of peace. And what I've noticed is that many crises, what, 24 hours later, they don't look like a crisis anymore. They might have been a crisis at that moment, but now they're, and because it might be gone because it's solved, or it might be because 24 hours later you say, well, actually we were worried for nothing. And yeah,
Yeah.
so thanks for sharing that. I want to move to that next question about remote work. And you talked already about working for different countries, both physically, but I think also remotely. So could you share us a little bit? What are your tips about remote working?
I think it's all in the mind. Apparently, when we were working pre-COVID era in the organizations, but connected to the global centers of those organizations, we were still doing remote work. We were connected with our colleagues back in the US or in the UK or in other countries just through our computer sets. I think it was just the space that we got used to and the environment we got used to saying, that if we are in office only then we have productivity, and if we are working
Mm.
remotely from anywhere else it won't bring in productivity. um, what remote work taught me is I was more productive when I was not working in the office environment, because I knew that I could control my personal life, I could control my work life. It also opened up doors for me, not just in the continents that I was already part of in my network, but also the continents that I had never explored. And Europe was one such continent. It also opened up doors for me to balance out my learning, my self paced learning, and also my organization requirements in terms of delivering the roles. So I think it's all about understanding the pros and cons of both environments. For some, remote working works beautifully. For some, working from office space works beautifully. It doesn't mean that the world has to choose the other extremes all the time. It could just be a balanced way of a hybrid model, and where people choose what they want to do at the end of the day and still deliver the outcome. Because I think what shows results is the outcome and not the way we've achieved that outcome. I think the focus is more on how we do it rather than what we've achieved at the end of the day, which kind of dilutes the whole differentiation between remote working and working in office for people.
And you say that for some people it's working better remote, for some people it's working better in the office. Where are you on that scale? Are you somewhere in one of the camps, or you're in between? How does that work for you?
So I have been open to remote. I have been open to hybrid. I think somewhere I was never comfortable with being in the office whole day long, where you are spending hours just to travel and get to the workspace, then getting settled, and then there will be some people who will be busy with water cooler conversations, so you have to wait for them to get free to get your work done. I think somewhere hybrid and remote working kind of addressed those gaps, wherein you could achieve more than what you could earlier do in the office space. So for me, my natural preference is remote working on hybrid. Um, but yes, if the world decides to close down both options one fine day and say you only have to work from office, I will have to really think through what next.
Mhm. It's but I think where your story is recognizable for many people. When especially what you say that in the office we sometimes lose time on multiple kind of things. Um, and at the same time I recognize that being in the office sometimes gives you more the opportunity to have some conversations that are harder sometimes remote. Yeah, I've worked these days with people who are, or a lot of people in my team are in Lviv in Ukraine, which is in the middle of a war. And so it's technically impossible to go to their office, and that, yeah, I just feel it. So some of these people can leave their country, but the men are not allowed. So that makes it really hard to get that connection. Yeah, it I do miss it sometimes with these kind of people. Is that something you recognize as well? That for sometimes you go into the office from time to time to do some of that, or is there not something like that?
Um, so it really depends in the context. So as you rightly said, there are some countries that are struggling to survive at this moment with whatever disturbances are happening around them. And we had some people from those countries as part of our development teams in some of my organizations. I think the beautiful part of these organizations was that they recognized it and they created a remote space for them to stay connected and still continue to do what they wanted to do. And there was no hard and fast rule wherein if it means 8 hours, you have to be here for 8 hours. If it means 40 hours in a week, it has to be 40 hours in a week. No, you decide what you want to deliver at the end of the day, depending on your circumstances, and we are good with it. If there are days you cannot deliver for XYZ reasons, we are good with it. But what's important is communication. So whether you're remote, whether you're hybrid, or you're in office, communication plays an important role. But at the same time, If you're only communicating, which means you're only part of meetings the whole day long, then what is your productivity and what is it and when is it you get time to actually deliver the outcomes? So I think there are a lot of factors that the organizations really need to study, and then throw it up as an open choice for the people to understand what is it that they want to do. So is it the process you want to focus on, or is it the outcome you want to focus on? When it comes to outcome, then everything else is inconsequential. But when it's process, then everything actually just revolves around process, and then there is no buy-in of what others are going through and what challenges they're facing. Because at the end of the day, you will tell them it's a process, we can't help you.
Mm. Yeah, I recognize that. That's yeah, and we're back to human versus processes and everything. So yeah,
Yes.
um, and that probably is also in the direction that we're going for the next question, because the next question what I want to ask is, what's a book you have read you want to talk about?
So, a book which has been always close to my heart is Tobias's The People's Scrum. Um, I think that was the first
And
book I.
that's the book I think you're
Yes,
talking about.
yes,
And I had Tobias on the show also. It was published as 113. So yeah, people talk. He talks some more about some of the stuff. So yeah, why? Could you say some more about the influence that that book had you on you?
yes. What I really love about Tobias is his vulnerability and his openness in what he writes and what he speaks. And this book is particularly one of those examples which resonated with me. Even though it talks about the again the heart of any organization, which is people in the Scrum aspect. For me, I looked at it from a wider perspective, which is from the agile aspect. So he talks about people over processes, and he also talks about how important it is to look at human connections and look at collaborative efforts to make a flexible, adaptive environment, uh, which kind of resonates with my natural style of who I am and what I have been doing. I think another thing that really stood out for me in that book was the element of continuous improvement. And that only comes in with reflective practices. He talks about retrospectives, where teams can openly discuss about what went right, what did not go right, what is it that they can do differently. I think when the organizations start developing that culture about the ongoing learning, the adaptation, it kind of talks more about the resilience and the long term success journey for an organization. And I think the last thing which really stood out to me is what question do you think I should also ask, and what is the answer? So, what is that most surprising benefit that you've experienced from agile coaching? Could be one of my questions. Um, and the answer would be, you know, multiple within the agile coaching network. So I think what he was trying to emphasize here was what is the willingness to share, and where is the willingness to share the knowledge and the experiences among the coaches, which can actually help us grow together in the agile space that we are creating for the organizations. I think these were the three key learnings that I took away from the book.
Really like that, and yeah, it's a book that yeah had a tremendous impact on a lot of people. I would say it's. I need to see it somewhere there in my. It's yeah, it's you can't see it because it's not on the camera, but it's somewhere there as well because I really like that book as well. So well, I can let me try. If I bring myself full screen, probably people can see it. It's somewhere there in that corner on the so I'll bring you back. But yeah, I really like that book as well. And Tobias has his way, and sometimes people feel a little bit offended by some of his comments that he's making about the community. But I think in many, not to say all cases, he's right. He's just showing us a mirror on where we are and showing the parts where we need to have have a look at some of these things about, okay, this is something that what I would say, yeah, where people need to pay attention to, and the people side has been ignored by a lot of people, I would say, but well, too much, and we need to go back. Yeah, at the same time, I sometimes feel that we're sometimes also ignoring the technical part these days a little bit, because sometimes we have people who only care about people, but we still need to, well, if you don't know how to deliver great software, that's another problem. But definitely these two are really important parts. I want to move to that next question about, what's a question do you think that I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Why did you move to Agile?
So tell me, why did you move to Agile? Because indeed you had already an interesting career path with some of these things. So what triggered you to move into the Agile space?
I think I think the need for bringing in people at the center of Agile world is somewhere got lost in the translation.
Hmm. I'm
And
still
I
here, and somehow my camera seems to be having a trouble. I mean, I'm trying to get it up to speed. So keep talking, I would say.
sure. And as you rightly said, looking at the mirror all the time. I think these two aspects somewhere got diluted in the translation into the agile space. And this is something that I want to really, really bring back into the organizations and help them look at, not just from the frameworks and from the principles, but right from where the whole journey begins for an organization, which is people and reflections.
Wow. And is that something that you, yeah, sorry, I still couldn't get my camera up. Is that something that you didn't thought was possible in your the things that we were doing before?
So the things that I was doing before, which is primarily into business transformation and HR transformation. Yes, people were center of it, and I was doing things that I was enjoying a lot. But I think when I wanted to move into technology, that experience somewhere did not really count. And for me to stay in the space of technology, it meant transitioning into agile, but then bringing those learnings from my past, which were more people centered and more reflective practices in the journey for the organizations to succeed.
Okay, I can, yeah, we can definitely see that. And so so how did you then discover Agile? Because in the transition things, where did you discover Agile?
Interesting story. So this happened during the lockdown, and I met Francis Lalman, one of the agile practitioners from Belgium. He's currently in Singapore. And he introduced me to this whole wild world of agile. He comes from a similar background of human resources, and he brought in a lot of unconventional practices using agile principles for the organizations. And when I started investing time in the learning journey with him and his network, I realized that there is potential. There is potential for me to move and bring those learnings and reflections here for the organizations and help them look at agile in a different way, what we call as the unconventional way, which Tobias and Francis are helping the network to look at. And when it started resonating, I started creating a lot of co-travelers with me in this journey. And that's how I started becoming part of the organizations and in their agile journey and helping them see a different perspective.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story, because I know a lot of people, well, people who've been into the agile space for 20 years ago might move more into the direction that Francis has been moving, I would say. And so you come from the the opposite side, and that's really nice to hear that story. So thanks for adding that part to it. Um, well, we've been talking already for a long time, but I want to know is, who else do you think I should also invite and have convers- sorry, conversation
Um,
with?
Akimi, she has been a great agile
I think
practitioner.
that's Kimi.
Yes.
So tell me about her.
Similar story and journey. Just the difference is that she was already part of the technology world, and she was part of the software testing group, I think, when she started her journey. Um, Lived across different continents, right from Asia to Canada to US to UK, and now she's in Europe. Again, comes with a similar mindset of bringing people at the center of the agile transformations, and not just focus on principles and frameworks alone to drive change in an organization. I've learned a lot, and I still learn a lot from her. So I think she's going to be an excellent contributor for this podcast.
And so, could you say some more? How did you, what I would say, how did you, yeah, connect with her? How did you get to know her?
So these were through my um learning journeys that I take outside of my workspace. And I invest a lot of time in meetup groups. And I happened to meet her in Liberating Structures meetup event, where we exchanged notes and we exchanged our thoughts during the breakouts. And then we just decided to connect. I think I think it was destined to get connected. And then we've never seen back, and we've just been in conversations throughout.
And then you realize, oh, it's already so long that we've, yeah, known each other. And, but we, yeah, I recognize a lot of that stuff. So a lot of these kind of connections into that space. So thanks for sharing that. And I do think you had a second person in mind that you wanted to introduce here.
Yes, Corinne Stark. She is another agile
And I think
practitioner.
that's her.
Yes,
So tell me
uh,
about her.
a great, a great human, I'll say, that I've met, and the only person who's never introduced herself as an agile practitioner. Um, she always brings in a lot of thought, a lot of reflections in what she's doing. Um, One of the very few agile practitioners who's been vulnerable and who's openly spoken about what she's learned in her journey and what she continues to learn. The biggest inspiration that I had from her is she started her journey just like Tobias in the later part of her life. Um, and I'm just amazed how she's created a space for herself in that transition. So, again, a great person to have on this podcast to share about the transformation and transition journey, which she took internally and externally in her life.
Thanks for sharing that, because that's indeed something that I think is yeah, might be an interesting person to talk to. And yeah, already the way you introduce them, it gives me the feeling like, okay, these are people I want to talk about. Well, Natasha, it's been a wonderful time that we spoke. I think I don't know exactly. I think at yeah, a little bit more than an hour and 15 minutes, an hour, yeah, and 15 minutes, something like that, that we've been speaking. So that's a wonderful time. If people want to connect with you, what could be a good way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best way to find me.
And
That's
that
where I
should
am
be
most
the
active.
address, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, only rest me to thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful conversation. I know that before you were rather nervous, but I have the feeling that that nerve completely went away, because it felt for me a very logical, very fluent conversation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making it so easy.
It's with stories like yours that that make it easy. I don't. It's not me that make it easy. It's your really your life story and the way you tell everything with that fluency. Yeah, it just makes it for me a wonderful way to spend my afternoon. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.